What's up, guys? It's three-time NFL Pro Bowler, all-decade return specialist, Josh Cribbs. I want to welcome you to the College Sports Connection podcast, where Double A, Alex, and AJ host the Mid-American Conference Best.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to the College Sports Connection podcast. I'm your host, Alex the Captain. Joining me, as always, AJ the Guru.
What's going on, everybody?
It's been a long month, AJ, but we are back.
Been a while. We both have professionally had changes in our careers. We've been busy dealing with that, and then there hasn't been a whole lot of news until the past week or two, or something, within the last week or two. So we're finally starting to get caught up on things, and it's finally nice to have a few things to talk about. We have a couple things we're going to get into towards the later end of the show. Some fun, interactive things. We'll get into that in a little bit, but we'll also post that on our Twitter too to ask you guys for your inputs there.
Sure.
But big news. Let's start with the conference we cover, the MAC.
Sure.
Let's get right into them. We've got a vote coming here about a fall season.
Yeah, and I guess, and you could kind of talk about the Big Ten here a little bit too, but I think the MAC at the time when they made the decision to postpone fall sports, I think that everybody was in agreement that it was probably the right call. It wasn't one of those things where it was like, oh, they're just doing it because of X, Y, and Z. Yes, we know money was involved. Yes, we know, there's a lot of things involved. But with the Big Ten, after a lot of pressure from a lot of parents and a lot of fans.
And presidents of the United States.
Yeah. They reverse course, and the Big Ten's playing a fall schedule, and the Mid-American Conference, our beloved Mid-American Conference, is looking to do the same.
They are. And, I would really love to be a fly on the wall in that Big Ten meeting, because Kevin Warren did come out and say that they were not going to revisit it. And I'm just curious, obviously it's known that Donald Trump called him and talked to him about it.
Mm-hmm.
But what were the conversations like? What was said? Because Warren was so steadfast in what, his stance was that we're not going to have a season. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of influences, don't get me wrong, with parents protesting outside the Big Ten office, players speaking up, coaches speaking up, governors, doctors, everybody in between was speaking up. But I really would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in that office just to hear those conversations, because the original vote was 3-11, I believe, in favor of not playing.
Right.
But now they say it's unanimous.
Mm-hmm.
So how are you going to change all those 11 other schools, their minds? It's just interesting. I'm really curious to see what went on in there. And, of course, we'll never know. But let alone it's been really interesting to know. And I don't think the MAC will be that dramatic because, it's obviously a smaller conference. And I think logistically they could do it a lot easier because they only have to travel to a couple different states.
Well, exactly.
They're within a bus ride of everywhere, essentially.
Well, exactly. I mean, you look at the landscape of the MAC. You're basically in 4 states: Illinois, Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, and then you've got the one outlier in Buffalo, which is in Western New York. So it's not really an overly dramatic road trip to Buffalo. It's probably
It's just on the turnpike on 90. That's all it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the longest bus trip for most of the schools. However, it's not overly dramatic. It's a 5-hour trip. At least from Toledo, it's a 5-hour trip. I mean, obviously,
I've been to Buffalo twice. I've been up in the area, and it's a boring drive, but it's manageable. I mean, I drove from Muncie to Buffalo, just even north of Buffalo a little bit, and then I drove from Plymouth to Buffalo, and it's a toll road. It's 90 the whole way.
Yeah, so I mean, but it's a straight shot, which I mean, you can't get much better than that. It's not like Iowa or Nebraska traveling to Rutgers.
You think about it too, it's a straight shot for everybody but Ohio.
Yeah, because Miami goes up 75 and then hangs a right.
Yep. Same thing with Ball State.
Mm-hmm.
you go up to Angola, get on the turnpike and head east.
Yeah.
And Jacau, I mean,
You
90
just
goes
head
right.
east.
So what's that?
I was going to say, yeah, with Northern Illinois, you just head east.
Yeah. So I mean, the turnpike goes right through Chicago. So yeah, I mean, it's a quick trip, and I think logistically the MAC can make that happen. Without fans, and they can still get some action money, some of the TV money, which
exactly.
At the end of the day is going to be huge.
Well,
and I talked about this the other day. Austin Peay, what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
They're allowing them to play the first 3 games of their schedule. One was at Pitt and then Cincinnati this weekend, and I can't remember. I think it was like Charlotte week 1 or something like that. They were able
sounds
to
right.
Get their money, but play the first 3 games. They got paid out, and then call it a year. Now that has benefits, but also like if you're a player, you play 3 games, you're starting to get into the swing of things, and you have to postpone until the spring, which would be tough. But financially, that helps out big time. Because I mean, they made like $250,000 just going to Cincinnati.
Yeah, I mean, they got paid to go get kicked up and down the field for 60 minutes, but guess what? That's money that the athletic department's going to use to make sure that the program survives.
Exactly. I think they only had like a $14 million athletic budget too, or something.
Yeah, it was something really minuscule, smaller than all the MAC schools, I think, as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And
but
so I saw that number. I go, this makes a lot more sense.
Well, exactly, and I think you're absolutely right. I would love to be a fly on the wall in those Big Ten meetings and how they were able to get these schools to come back. And I mean, you and I have talked about it a lot. We've got Justin Fields who headlined that petition from Ohio State. You've got Ohio State alumni like Bobby Carpenter, chirping at the Big Ten. You've got Jim Harbaugh. You've got James Franklin. These coaches from, these powers are saying, no, we want to play. We can do this safely. So I'm really curious as to what presidents and what athletic directors are hearing different that they're not relaying to the coaches, and what the coaches are hearing that the athletic directors just aren't getting. Because it's very clear that this wasn't a decision made by the coaches. This was a decision made by the school presidents. And it doesn't sound like they truly consulted the athletic departments. And that's where I have an issue. I get it. You have kids that you want to have your students on campus in order to play. I get that. And I respect that, because then there's a whole nother level of it. So that's fine. I understand that. However, if your athletic department says, look, we can test our kids multiple times a week with these new rapid tests, let us play until we can't. Don't tell us we can't at all. Give us the opportunity to play until another big spike happens, whatever. Sure. Let us do this. So I get it. And I've gone back and forth on this issue. I agreed with the decision. I've disagreed. I think really at this point, I'm just so happy that we're getting Big Ten football back and even potentially MAC football back.
Absolutely. Now you're seeing the issue too with Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
They had to cancel this week against Wake Forest. They had 4 guys positive. South Florida, I think, had a case too.
Yeah.
So they're done this week. And so, and my thing is, if teams have test positive, they're done for the year. Because, you're pushing back the season essentially.
Yeah. Now,
granted, they did build in a few weeks, but the Big Ten, they can't afford to build in any weeks.
No.
Because they're be cutting it close when it comes to the college football playoffs.
Well, exactly. They're already, you're setting up an 8+1 season. That's not time for you to, let's say Ohio State, has an outbreak and they have to play Michigan the last week of the season. There's no time for you to say, all right, we're going to play this game in 2 weeks and decide whatever. Like, that's just not possible. It can't work. The Big Ten, I think, kind of whiffed on this. They, Kevin Warren kind of dragged his feet on this a lot longer than he really should have.
Yeah.
And now if there's an outbreak, you've now canceled the season because there's not going to be any way to salvage that.
Right. And the thing is too, a couple of weeks ago, I believe it was Jim Harbaugh said we could be ready in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Now we've got 5 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's a lot of time.
Well, exactly.
And but then again, I don't know if these teams would, because I mentioned they had extensive protocols and whatnot, so I don't know if every player has to have so many positive tests before they can play. I'm sure the logistics behind it are a little more extensive than what we know.
Sure.
But I think leaving 5 weeks. I mean, leaving these 5 weeks right here, it's tough.
Mm-hmm.
That's really tough. I mean, starting October 24th, and in theory they could have started the 17th or something like that, and everybody had an extra week just in case they needed it.
Well, and it's tough because not only have you shortened the season and you've condensed it to an 8-week gauntlet, right? So none of these teams get a bye week. Some of them, need that bye week more than others.
Mm-hmm.
Looking to you, Indiana, Illinois.
Right.
But now you're effectively telling these players and these coaches, you either play all of it or you play none of it.
Yep.
I mean, you're not giving them an option to even recover. And I think that's super frustrating. And it's frustrating for us as fans too, because now you're looking at, another 4 weeks while we're watching the SEC play, the
Yep.
ACC play, even some of these, we're watching all these conferences play and get into their conference schedules. And then now the Big Ten, potentially the MAC, is going to be playing this reduced, super condensed season.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a weird balance.
It is. And all the SEC, ACC, they all have those built-in weeks now too.
Mm-hmm.
They will start early. So if something happens, like we've seen in Notre Dame, Wake Forest, South Florida, they have time to make that game up, as are the Big Ten's not going to.
Well, exactly.
And I think if there were to be an outbreak in the MAC, say they bring MAC football back, and there's an outbreak, they just cancel the season. I'm willing to bet that's what will happen.
I mean, it would be the only logical choice, frankly. And that's not from a money standpoint. That's from we talked about it, we tried it. We can't finish this. We have to move on.
And because they don't have the resources the Power Five do.
Exactly. And that's what I think will happen with some of these other smaller conferences as well, like the MAC. If they have an outbreak or something, they're just going to be done. I think you've got the AAC, who is the proverbial strong of the group of five and the weak of the Power Five. It's that. I'm really curious to see what happens with them if there's an outbreak in that conference, because I think that conference is going to be, if they cancel, then the bigger conferences will really start to consider. If they don't cancel, then the smaller conferences will be like, all right, well, they're clearly just better resourced than we are. So, I mean, it's a weird kind of limbo that we're in right now.
It really is. And I'm curious to see, too, when the details, I believe the MAC meeting is Friday, I believe.
Yeah, I think I saw Friday, and that a decision would be out by Monday or on Monday.
Yeah, so I'm really curious to see kind of what they propose.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it'd be like a 6-game season, I think, which would be the only logical reason, or the only logical thing. But then you look at it, maybe a MAC championship game, maybe, depending on location.
Well, I was going to say the proposal and stuff that I've seen says anywhere from a 6 to 8 conference only game or a schedule. I've also heard divisional only schedule.
That would make sense.
Which wouldn't be bad. I could see that. You've got MAC East, MAC West, and then there's they would do a protected crossover game. So like Bowling Green Toledo would be protected, something like that. So you would get like a 6-7 game schedule, and then the MAC championship would still be at Ford Field. So that is what is being proposed right now.
Okay, that would make sense too, because again, you could drive to Ford Field. Every school could,
easy. Yeah,
hop on it wouldn't be a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm kind of curious to see when it comes to the resources.
Yep.
What can the MAC provide? Because they can't administer all the tests the Power Five do.
No, not at all.
Have the resources. So I'm really curious to see, or do they only dress upperclassmen? Red shirt guys, do they have to sit out this year and get another red shirt? Things like that. Reducing roster numbers.
Well, and that's something I'm wondering too, is because when all of this started going down and they were talking about how they were going to save travel budget and things like that, they were talking about only letting like 80 guys dress or something for road games. Or, whatever the number was. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but they were talking about reducing it by like 15 for road games. And I think that's one, obviously limits how many people can get in contact with it. But two, it still allows you to have guys who may be critical to the program be able to play in case, your star quarterback goes down with COVID for 2 weeks, whatever.
Sure.
So I don't know. It's interesting.
I'm curious now. I wonder if that reduction number includes staff. All the water boys, the managers, the trainers.
I would imagine that's probably a separate reduction number. I think the reduction number I saw was strictly players who could dress.
Okay.
So I would imagine that,
Because we see schools now. It was just announced today. Ryan Day and Chris Holtman, they're taking a 5% pay cut voluntarily.
Yep.
And so, and you see that kind of across the board too, the furloughs and layoffs and things like that, positions being eliminated.
Well, and I think the head coach at Central Michigan, the football coach, he, if I remember reading it correctly today, he's going to take a voluntary pay cut as well.
Mm-hmm.
If it means that the players and stuff get to play. So,
Right.
I mean, there's going to be money that they can move around from these coaches, from these staffs. And I think it'll be really interesting to see what happens. I'm hopeful. I really think the MAC, now that the Big Ten is kind of showing, look, we're going to figure this out. I think the MAC almost has to follow suit.
Yeah, they have to. Because, I mean, in theory, they're the next conference.
Yeah.
They're under the Power Five, it's the AAC and the MAC.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you look at the team. So, and maybe the Mountain West, but.
Well, I think if the MAC comes back, there's going to be a lot of pressure for the Mountain West to come back.
I can't see the Mountain West doing it now because I don't think financially or anything would make any sense for them because there's such small programs. Ever since TCU left that conference,
mm-hmm.
they've gone downhill dramatically. So
well, they've gone downhill, and they're so spread out too. You look at the geographical distance between those schools. It's just as bad as the Big Ten.
Yeah.
With less resources.
And obviously, we talk about pressure too. The Pac-12.
Yeah.
Who knows what's going on with those guys?
I mean, the Pac-12 is in a similar boat as the Mountain West, though. Look at how, California covers like 5 Big Ten states, it's just such a huge thing. And to go from like Stanford, Oregon State, all the way down to USC, UCLA, that's a long distance. And sure, they could fly. They've got the team charters, whatever. But I just don't see it happening. I really don't. I think we will see a year of college football without the Pac-12 and without the Mountain West. As much as I would love to see them playing.
Yeah, and it comes to the Pac-12 too, and they're when it comes to playoffs, it's not going to matter, so it's fine.
Well, exactly.
And that's one thing too. I was talking to my brother about. We're not going to have much of a bowl season, are we?
No, I've been hearing talk that they're planning on eliminating all the bowl games except New Year's 6 and the playoffs.
Oh gosh, I'm not going to get a Idaho Potato Bowl. I'm not going to get the Red Box Bowl.
I love the Armed Forces Bowl. That's one of my favorites to watch.
Yeah, that's always one of that's like Christmas Day, isn't it?
The day after Christmas, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. That should be for next week's segment. Let's do our favorite bowl game names.
Done. You guys heard it here first. Next week, we'll be tweeting out at you guys. Submit your favorite bowl game names, and we'll do our own rankings.
Is that some of those names and some of those sponsors I laugh at?
The Maker's Mark Bowl.
Maker's Mark. Yeah. Well, then they had like the Dixie Chopper Bowl, I think was in there at one point.
Yep.
Cheez-It Bowl.
They had the before it was the Midas Car Care Bowl.
Yep.
They had the Little Caesars Pizza Bowl here in Detroit.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I mean, Little Caesars headquartered in Detroit. It made perfect sense. But it's just some of these names are just the Pizza Bowl. Like what?
Yeah. And the one thing that always has crushed me, and I've always hated it, when it comes to the Fiesta Bowl. Tostitos Fiesta Bowl was the greatest bowl game name in the history of bowl games.
Oh, and they had that name for years, and now it's what, the PlayStation Fiesta Bowl?
Then it was Battle Frog before that.
Yep.
But Battle Frog was 1 year, and that was Ohio State Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
And then it went to PlayStation. But yeah, the Tostitos Fiesta Bowl, and I can remember Brent Musburger saying, "Playing for all the Tostitos." To me, the greatest name in sports, honestly.
It was an iconic bowl game.
Yeah. I mean, it made sense too.
Well, and then now you've got the Rose Bowl, which never had a primary sponsor who had to have their logo on the field. Now it's what, Vizio?
It used to be. I think it's Western Mutual now.
It's either Western Mutual or Citi.
Yeah, one of those. Yeah, what's one of those banks? Yeah.
Yeah, like, and it's just like, the Rose
I
Bowl
went to
used to just be the Rose Bowl.
the granddaddy.
No frills, no nothing.
Yeah.
And I mean, you get 100,000 fans packed into that place. Like it's a magical bowl game, even if it has no implications other than just winning the bowl game. Like
Yeah.
it's the Rose Bowl. You want you want to win the Rose Bowl.
I've been to the stadium and it's just incredible.
Oh
Never
yeah,
been
it's a
inside,
beautiful
but-
stadium.
What else? When I went to the Alamo Bowl in 2004, it was the MasterCard Alamo Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yep.
was Russell versus Les Miles this last year at Oklahoma State.
I was gonna say, wasn't that Ohio State versus Oklahoma State?
Yeah, Ohio State won 33-7.
Yep.
We drove.
33-17, I thought.
Wasn't there 17? I forget.
It might be. I don't
I
know.
was 12 years. I was 12 years old.
I was
And we
29.
drove from Plymouth, Indiana to San Antonio, Texas.
Oof,
We drove.
what a hike.
There is nothing past St. Louis.
Oh, goodness, no.
You
When
get
I-
into Texas, you're like, okay, yeah, we're almost there. 8 hours later, we're finally in San Antonio.
Yeah, no, it takes forever. It's awful.
And this was right before Hurricane Katrina. So we,
That's right.
or right after Hurricane, was it before? It had to have been right before. And so, yeah, we drove through New Orleans on our way back and then shot up that way. And then a
Okay.
few months later, Katrina hit. But all right, that's enough bowl talk. We got to save that for next week.
Yeah, that bowl games next week. You guys tuning in, we will be tweeting out, getting your suggestions for how we rank these bowl games.
Yeah.
So be on the lookout for that. But
Yeah.
traditions, that's
Yeah.
the topic for this week.
We're going to talk tonight about our top college football traditions. I'm not going to say football. I'm going to say just college traditions in general. I mean, I think they all bleed into football anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean,
So-
I think most of the traditions, they run back to what college football does. But
Well,
yeah,
marching band too, and cheerleaders,
Mhm.
things like that. Yeah.
exactly.
So I'll start it off.
Go for it.
Mine's obviously my number one pick is always going to be Script, Ohio.
Sure.
I'm a homer. I'm going to take it. Every
It's
time
a
I see
beautiful tradition, honestly.
it is. I've seen it hundreds of times probably, and every time I get the goosebumps and chills. And what's really cool, a lot of people don't know, is before an Ohio State home game, they have what's called a skull session.
Mhm.
And that's at St. John's Arena where the band comes in, they play a couple songs, the team walks through, coach talks, a player talks, everybody, cheers, let's go Bucks.
Right.
They go on their way. And the band comes in and they sing and they play music and then they exit out. It's just awesome. It's before every home game. It's so much fun. Then script and dotting the I and stuff like that. Because
Mhm.
every time I've seen it, though, I always take a video of it. And I have a million videos of it, but it's all the same every time. But for me, it's just so, I don't know.
It's
just-
iconic.
It is. It's so cool because every time you see it, it's somebody new dotting the I. And it's just, you only see it once or twice a year. You see it on TV, but in person, I only get to see it once or twice a year. So that's got to be my number one pick.
So I'm going to elaborate on that a little bit and share a little story from my high school days.
Yeah.
I had a high school band director, Linda Foxmiller was her name. And for those who don't know by now, I'm a trumpet player, did marching band. I'm a music major at Toledo. But we would go, while she was the band director, we would go down to Ohio State's end of season marching band concert.
Mhm.
And she went to Ohio State so that was something that she loved. She, from what I understand, she marched with Ohio State as well, so like that's pretty cool. My band teacher marched at Ohio State. Like that's you don't hear that very often, and when you do, it's like, okay, like them or not, Ohio State's got, I mean, their nickname is Tabiddle, the best damn band in the land. I can't take that away from them because you look at their halftime shows and everything they do, it's incredible. But we would go down and we would watch that every year. And I loved marching band. I love traditions of marching band. I marched in college and high school. To this day, I owe my love of marching band to those concerts because they are just so iconic. I've obviously come to love the Michigan marching band, the University of Toledo with their marching band, things like that. But I owe my love of marching bands to going to those Ohio State end of season marching band concerts.
And one thing, I've been a fan my whole life, and I didn't know this until last year, maybe 2 years ago. The band uniforms aren't black.
No.
Dark navy blue.
Yep.
And I didn't know that until a friend told me. And then I zoomed in on uniforms, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is navy blue.
Yeah,
And it
isn't
came
it
out,
wild?
it is, because I mean, it looks black from the stands, but then you could really tell though when the Ohio State wore their black uniforms a couple
Mhm.
years ago,
Yeah.
at prime time, and then you could really tell, oh, they are navy blue, but you would never ever be able to tell.
No, goodness no. Yeah, I think I think those uniforms look super cool. And
Yeah.
like you said, that's a fun little tidbit people don't know. For me, one of my favorite traditions is the USC Trojan
Mm-hmm.
during pregame. Comes out, sword right in the field, crowd goes nuts. I love that tradition. That's not my number one tradition, but I absolutely love that. I think it gets the crowd excited.
Sure.
People are hype. You've got in the Coliseum, you've got 100,000 people losing their minds over this guy coming out. And I don't know the selection process, but from what I understand, it's a pretty prestigious
Sure.
process to go through. Like, you have to do a lot. And so to get selected to do that, and I just think that's one of the coolest things
Mm.
in college sports, in college football. That's, to me, one of my favorite traditions.
Yeah.
Because that just sets the tone for the rest of the day.
Sure. That is always a cool one to see. My next one is going to be Enter Sandman from Virginia Tech.
Mm-hmm.
My parents had the privilege of going down to Vatech a couple of years ago to watch Virginia Tech, Ohio State.
Yep.
My high school football team doctor was a team doctor for Virginia Tech at the time.
Oh, wow.
And so that game was on a Monday, Labor Day weekend.
I remember that,
and
yeah.
Like Thursday before, he called my parents. He goes, "Hey, I have 2 tickets for you guys if you want them." They're like, "Yeah, we'll be there." So they drove down to Blacksburg and went to the game. And that's always one thing cool. When I've watched Vatech on TV, it's always, I always want to see that because Interesting has a great song.
Mm-hmm.
Like having all the students jump up and down and things like that.
Right.
But of course, my parents got to see it, and they said it was electric.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure they have a video of it somewhere, but just hearing about it is like, okay, that would be that's a great recruiting selling point right there too. Mm-hmm. Having the cadets line up the tunnel, and Valtech has such a tiny tunnel. I don't know if you ever noticed that.
I've never noticed that, but it's something I'll look for now.
Very, very narrow.
Okay.
And so these guys, they come out of the tunnel, jump, Vatech, or not Vatech, sorry, Enter Sandman's coming on,
mm-hmm.
and everybody's jumping around. It's awesome to see. It's one of those things too. Just everybody, if you're an away fan, you get excited because one, everybody loves that song, and
Sure.
Two, it's football, so everybody wants to get hyped and pumped up, and that's a great song to do it to.
Absolutely. No, and I think that's similar to what South Carolina, and I don't know if they do it anymore, but they used to. They used to do 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
To kick off their games and like get the team out there, and the stadium would just erupt and go absolutely nuts. But it's using those iconic things from, the 70s and 80s and all that, like using that. One, you attract the people who grew up with that and love that. But two, you also get the new people who just get hype because everybody around that, it's contagious. Like that's, to me, I think that's why I love some of these traditions, because they're just, you can't help but get excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like I said, home or away fan, no matter where you're at, you're going to get excited. Even away fans come to Ohio State, for example, because I'm just saying them because I know them the best.
Mm-hmm.
People get, away fans get goosebumps when they see a script.
Well, exactly.
You see the drum major high kicking out to the 50-yard line, tossing the baton, and never missing. Things like that. It just,
mm-hmm.
for the fan who doesn't see it all the time, who's not well versed in it, somebody from Minnesota travels to Columbus for a game, they see that, they think, oh, this is worth it just to see that.
Well, exactly. And I think, again, that is one of the most iconic traditions in college football for sure. We're going to go back to the Big Ten really quick, to one of my favorites. And it's not necessarily that it's like gets people excited, gets people hyped up, but I think it's just one of the coolest things that I see fans do and schools like encourage. Iowa. I want to say it's the beginning of the game or the third quarter. I can't entirely remember.
It's the end of the first, I believe.
Okay. So you know where I'm going. The wave to the hospital. Yep. To the children's hospital right there on campus. To me, that is one of the coolest little things that you could ever do, because I mean, a lot of those kids, they've got terminal illnesses, a lot of things going on, that they're trying to get figured out. But it makes those kids' days to
Sure.
see, 90,000 people waving and cheering for them, home, away, like it doesn't matter which fan you are. And I think that's what's beautiful about a lot of these traditions, home or away, you can at least respect the traditions of the program. But I think to me, it's one of the more meaningful traditions because those kids, on Saturdays, they look forward to that. Like when the Big Ten canceled, I was heartbroken for those kids because that was 6 Saturdays a year. They just lost seeing those fans and having that moment. So I'm really glad that football's coming back, even if they don't get all the fans in. I'm really hoping that that's a tradition they can continue because I know that those kids love it and those fans love it too.
They've been doing it a couple of years, and even like the opposing players, the opposing staffs, they all get in on it, and that is really cool to see. But it's always cool. They always have the camera on them when they do that too.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Fun. Man, I'm gonna go my next one here. I want to go Wisconsin jump around.
Good one.
That is one thing I've always wanted to do. I have a good friend of mine who's a huge Wisconsin fan and lives just outside of Madison. He's invited me up there countless times. And I want to go up there. I don't even care who they're playing. I just want to go up there and just do jump around. Because first off, it's a great song. Like, if you're at a wedding, if you're wherever, and you hear that song, you're jumping around, you're getting pumped, you're getting excited.
Sure.
But I can't imagine a football stadium of 80,000 people doing that, home or away. It just hype. It's kind of it's like Virginia Tech. It just gets everybody hyped.
Right.
And it's something they've been doing. I didn't do much research on that, but I'm like, I wonder how long that's been going on. It's for as long as I can remember.
Yeah, no, I mean and as long as I've been paying attention to college football, so the last 20 years, it's at least been happening. It may be longer than that, but it's been pretty close to the last 20 years at minimum. But that's a great tradition, for Big Ten fans. That's a cool one to want to be a part of. And I think that there's a lot of pageantry involved with that. And I mean, you look at that stadium and it's most electric for that at night. And I think that's super cool.
Oh, prime time at Madison, Camp Randall. That I gotta go up there and go. I have to go sometime.
It's a neat stadium.
He's invited me, I don't know, a couple times every year. And I just haven't done it. I go. And Madison's not that far of a drive. So
no, absolutely. So I'm going to switch gears from the Big Ten. Florida State. I think you already know where I'm going with this. The Spear. Similar to USC, the live mascot doing, a plant before the game. To me, there's just something about seeing that, and what I like about what Florida State does with this is the Seminoles, that name is officially sanctioned by the Seminole Nation. And their mascot is actually named after a Seminole Indian leader.
Right?
Yeah, Chief O. Osceola, I believe.
Osceola?
Yes. And any Florida State fans listening, if I butchered that, let me know. I want to make sure I respect that and get that right. But I love that tradition because it's not a disrespectful tradition. It's paying homage to the Seminole Nation from the area. And I think that's super, super cool. From what I understand, Florida State and the Seminole Nation actually have a very beautiful working relationship.
I think that's what I've heard too, yeah.
So,
which is great. And I think that's something that keeps tradition alive.
Well, exactly. So that's one of my favorites. Again, the history behind it because of their great working relationship, but also just because I have a thing for that pregame plant where it's like, no, this is our ground. Nobody's taking it. Gives me chills.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a cool one to see. I'm going to go off the Big Ten here. I'm going to Army Navy pregame. All the cadets on the field from March on. Well, I'm going to do the whole game in general because they do the pregame together, and then the postgame, everybody goes to their band and they've seen their alma mater. And for me, like, of course, that game is on its own because it's the last week. It's the week after everybody else plays. So it's them on Saturday and the NFL on Sunday. And just seeing that pregame is just so cool. Everybody sings March On, the cadets, and then they go to the stands and they're like college kids. You know, they get hyped up. And then, like, when they do the national anthem, for example, they're all there in attendance in a straight line in the stands, their caps on, and, you know, doing whatever they do.
Yep.
It's just so cool to, you know, even when presidents show up for that, or dignitaries, and, you know, post game, like I said, no matter who wins or who loses, they each respect each other and go to each other's sideline and sing their song, because here in a couple of years, they will all be fighting together wherever. And so at the end of the day, they're all one big team. And for me, that's always one of the few games that I plan my weekend around, because I want to make sure I'm home for the Army-Navy game, because obviously Army's been dominating the past couple of years.
Yep.
And after Navy, Navy ran the table for 10 years, it seemed like, and then Army finally got hot. And side note, did you see the uniforms the Army is wearing this year?
The honoring the was
red
it?
tail?
Yeah.
Those look sweet.
I'm pumped to see those on the field.
Yes, Navy did the ones a couple of years ago, the Blue Angels.
Yep.
Those are sick too.
Yeah, those are great.
But yeah, Army-Navy game for me, March On, pregame, and then postgame.
No, I mean, that it's really, like you said, that whole game is just incredible.
That's a bucket list item too.
Well, yeah, well, exactly. It's just that whole thing is just, it's one of the best rivalries in college sports. And, you know, people could say, oh, well, it's not the greatest rivalry, but I think it's one of the best rivalries. I won't dub it the greatest. Yeah. I think it's just a phenomenal rivalry because of the respect.
I feel bad for Air Force too, because they're kind of stuck out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, they're just way out there.
Like, was it the Commander's Cup?
Yeah, well, it's a three-way not tournament, but a three-way trophy.
But it's based on a point system, right?
It's based on a point it's based on a point system, but it's based on wins and losses against each other.
Yeah, okay.
And then there's a point system involved, and
all sports, I think.
Yeah, it's not just football. Yeah,
it's all sports, and that is really cool. The Commander's Cup, whatever they want to call it. Yeah.
So I've got just a couple more. This is probably my second to last one, unless I think of something else. Howard's Rock over at Clemson.
Yep.
This is such a cool thing. You know, they have, for those who don't know Clemson's football stadium, they have a horseshoe, I guess. And at the open end of the horseshoe, they have a rock that has been on there in the 60s, or since the 60s. The rock is from California, Death Valley, I believe.
Yep.
And it was given to Coach Frank Howard. And I don't know the entire history on this, but I think it's so cool. They just come out. They go to the locker room, and then they come out just to touch the rock and then go back to the locker room and then run down into their field. Like, it's just that's just
and
so
I believe
cool.
that rock was vandalized a couple of years ago.
It was, yes.
Somebody took an axe to it or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is a cool one. And Clemson does have one of those cool entrances too, where they take the bus around the stadium. They come from the locker room, they hop on the bus and go to the other side of the stadium where the entrance is and come down.
Right. Yeah, no, it's a great tradition. And yeah, it looks like that vandalization happened back in 2013. The guy was sentenced back in 2015.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, that's one thing, you know, for me, I get, you know, maybe that's a hated rival school. As much of a Michigan fan as I am, as much of a Toledo fan as I am, I may hate everything Ohio State does. You don't disrespect their traditions. There are just certain things you don't do in the name of rivalry. You don't disrespect the traditions of your rival, or of anybody really, but of your rival. Like, you know, to me, there's just, that shows a level of disrespect for not only your opponent, but for that rivalry as a whole. Like, you don't care about it, and you care about your publicity stunt more than you care about a great
Right.
time between the two programs.
Right.
That's just my opinion.
Sure. My next one's gonna be kind of random here. Tumor's Corner, Auburn.
Wow. Okay. Was not expecting that one.
No, I was trying to think outside of the Big Ten because that's all I know.
Sure.
And the MAC doesn't really have that, the battle for I-75, and so it's just about it.
Well, and then they have the battle or Miami and Ohio have the battle for the bricks or something.
Yeah. And then, like, Ball State has one with Northern Illinois, like a cornstalk or something like that.
Yeah.
But you go Tumor's Corner down in Auburn. It's essentially just TP the tree.
Yep.
You know? Well, they did. A couple of years ago, it was poisoned. Somebody had put a pesticide on it or something like that and killed it, I believe, is what ended up happening.
That's awful.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to see here. They were replaced. How does that work here? Excuse me. They arrested a guy from Dadeville, Alabama. He was sentenced to pay fine jail time, which he would be placed on probation after the trees were poisoned. After the trees were poisoned, efforts were made to save the tree, but were unsuccessful. The corner eventually was redone entirely with untainted soil and replaced with two newly fully grown southern oak trees. While the trees were replaced, people were restricted from rolling the trees with paper until acclimated to the environment.
Mm-hmm.
Then they were also set on fire in 2016. They were replaced. So those trees have been through some stuff.
Right.
But I think Tumor's Corner is just one of those cool, fun ones. It's off the field, but it's only fun when you respect it. And obviously, a lot of people have not respected it over the past few years. And so, but when you respect it and you have fun with it, that's kind of the same thing with the Mirror Lake jump at Ohio State.
Yeah.
They had to stop that because somebody died.
Yeah.
So that was always a great one right before the Ohio State Michigan game.
Yep.
But I'm gonna go Tumor's Corner just because it's random. It's random. It's fun. Something different. And during this pandemic, we could have used all that toilet paper. So.
Yeah, seriously. Thanks, guys. Way to waste all that toilet paper. I'm going to hop back over to the Big 12. Oklahoma, Sooner. They, after every score, what happens is, for people who don't know, after every score, they take a horse-drawn wagon out onto the field to celebrate. It circles the field or it does whatever on the field. But last year, like, separated from the horses, and like it became a big mess. I don't know. Yeah, it like tipped over, and like, nobody was seriously hurt, but it was that was a big mess, and I think they figured it out, and they're back to doing it again. But that was
after that happened last year. They didn't do it the rest of the year.
No, they didn't. I think that they're trying to figure it out. They're trying to do whatever, but I love that tradition because it's such a unique thing. Like, at most games you've got like the cheerleaders like in the end zone doing push-ups, and you've got, the mascot dancing with them or whatever. But to have a horse-drawn wagon drag flag carriers out onto the field to celebrate, that's just cool.
Yeah. And I think live mascots in general are cool. I mean, you got Mike the Tiger, LSU, you got Bevo at Texas, Uga at Georgia.
Yep.
You got Blue, Butler Blue. I think they're on the Butler 3 now. Who else has one? Oh, Auburn, the Hawk, War Eagle. That's a cool one too.
Yep.
And who else does? Who am I missing?
Well, Northern Illinois has Mission.
Yeah, Mission. Yeah.
And we love Mission here.
We love
at
Mission.
CSC.
We're fans.
He's fans of us too. He likes our stuff every once in a while, so that's always cool.
Those paws are always on Twitter.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, the live animal stuff is so cool, and I get it. A lot of the activists are against it, but when you look at the grand scheme of things, those animals are taking care of them better than most people.
Well, yeah, I think even when we had Adrian Myers on, he was talking about how Mission, he's walked like multiple times a day. Like he's getting snacks and treats. Like all the kids on campus love Mission, and it's one of those things you don't want to see Mission not be okay. Like it's that's your mascot. You carry that with a level of pride, and I think sure it's different with like Ohio State or Ball State or Toledo who have these character mascots. There's just some level of pride with a live animal mascot. And I think that's super, super cool.
Yeah, it is. And it's something different too. You don't want to go to the same. You don't want to go to different stadiums and see the same thing every time.
Right.
And so, but yeah, having those live animal mascots are pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you got the Husky, Washington Huskies. They have a Husky out there too.
That's right, they do, don't they? Those are really, really, really great.
They are. And these are things we could go on for hours too, because every school has something cool.
Well, give me your last one. I've got one more I'd like to discuss.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go back to the Big Ten. I'm gonna go back to Penn State. We are Penn State.
Yep, with the whiteout.
The whiteout, yeah. I mean, that's always one thing I wanted to go do too.
Mm-hmm.
Whiteout games are intense in general, but that's what we'll have to do. We'll have to get Chris Wormley back on here and see if he ever played the whiteout game.
Oh, that'd be sweet.
We'll have to ask him to see if he'll come back on.
Well, I know for a fact he did, because under Brady Hoke, Michigan played a whiteout game in his last year at Penn State.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, he would have been like a freshman or sophomore that year.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that would have been great. And it's
2013.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was at that Ohio State Michigan game that year. I was 13.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, the whiteout and the We Are Penn State's really cool.
Yep.
And they play. Was it Zombie Nation?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. You have like 7,000 people doing that.
Well, exactly, and I think
114,000.
Yeah, and I think with it's the second largest college football stadium in the country, and just something about a whiteout. And I love that. I love that Penn State does that, and I love that they can coordinate that, because getting 114,000 people to do the same thing is hard to do. But it's just they just know.
It looks so good on primetime.
Oh, for sure. You've got those stadium lights beating down on it, and it's just a sea of white. It just looks so cool. My last one, and this is me not even talking about Michigan, although I could really talk about some great Michigan traditions, like the Michigan marching band doing the flag in the middle. Like, there's a lot there. But one of my favorite ones, because of how iconic it is, the Notre Dame Play Like a Champion today.
Mm-hmm.
That sign has obviously been replaced over the years, but it's one of those things that when you're in the pregame tunnel and the players are walking down the steps or whatever, and they're all hitting that sign, to me, that's just one of the coolest things to see, because those players, I mean, yes, it's become tradition. Yes, it's something they do now, but that sign means something to the program, to the history of the program. And it means something to all those players. It's like, look, we're not just playing, for ourselves. We're playing for the past. We're playing for the future.
Sure.
And I think that's just one of the coolest little traditions, and not well talked about, but little traditions that I really enjoy.
I've got a story about that.
Okay.
Having grown up just south of Notre Dame,
sure.
One of my Little League football coaches was a taxi cab driver in South Bend.
Okay.
So we came to practice one day, and he goes, "Hey, I can get you guys into Notre Dame." And we're like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." Because he did a lot of taxi work. This was before Uber, so he drove around a lot of people from Notre Dame. And so 2 weeks later, here we are at Notre Dame football at the stadium. Brady Quinn was like a freshman.
Oh, wow.
Jeff Faden was a center. I only know that because I was a center and I got to meet him. Oh, man, who was the coach? He left Notre Dame and went to Washington, I believe.
Was that
It was before Charlie Weiss.
Right. No, I know exactly who you're talking about. I see him. I know exactly. Man, I gotta look that up now.
Yeah, that's gonna bother me. But I can't remember his name. But then there was a bunch of really good players on that team. Like Tom Zibikowski was there, I think.
Mm-hmm.
A couple other guys. But we got to tour the locker room. So we went.
Are you talking No. Tyrone Willingham?
Tyrone Willingham. Yep, that's it. Yep, Tyrone Willingham. And so he talked to us. He took a big picture with our team and whatnot. And then he goes, well, follow me, guys. So he took us to the locker room. We got to walk through the locker room. Then we got to walk down the steps, touch the sign, and go to the tunnel, and got to run out of the tunnel and run a lap around the field to come back up.
That's so cool.
And it was really cool. And I mean, I was not a fan, but I respect the tradition, and that was really cool. So 2 weeks later, we were playing a football game between Plymouth and South Bend.
Sure.
And this big van of just big dudes show up. And so they came for us, Notre Dame football players. They came to coach our team. And so our coaches are like, you boys just go have at it. They gave them the playbook, and they went out there. And they brought some cheerleaders with them. So we had Notre Dame cheerleaders on the sidelines for us.
That's awesome.
We had like 4 or 5 Notre Dame players on the field with us calling plays and helping us out. And all these other coaches were getting upset. Like, hey, these guys, they're not coaches. What are they doing out here? My dad was commissioner of the league, and he goes, they play for Notre Dame. You tell them to get off the field. And so they didn't. I wish I could remember who the players were.
Sure.
But, yeah, they came down and they coached our game. And, like, our coaches, our coaches were on the sidelines and gave them the playbook and goes, here you go, boys, have some fun with this one. And they were out there, helping us line up correctly, calling the right plays, doing this, that, and the other. And then we had the Notre Dame cheerleaders on our sidelines cheering for us and things like that. It was awesome. That was like 4th or 5th grade probably.
How is that now not your favorite tradition? I don't –
I was too young.
Cool.
But no, it was really cool. And like to go through the locker room, of course it's changed obviously since last time I was there. But like, going down the stairway, touching the sign, and then going out into the tunnel, doing our little chant, then walking, running out of the tunnel and doing a lap around the field. That was pretty cool.
That's awesome.
I think I did it, and then my brother did it the year after, I think is what it was.
Sure.
But yeah, that was really cool.
No, that's awesome. And I
love. Glad you looked that up because that would have bothered me.
Yeah, Tyrone Willingham. Well, and I know there is controversy with him at Notre Dame, and there's a lot of stuff that went down, but I remember that now. That was that's one of those things, like, tradition or not, you'll never forget that. Like, you ran out onto that field, and like that's awesome.
So it had to be between 02 and 04 when that happened.
Right.
I would say probably 03.
Okay.
Probably when that happened.
Okay.
But
no, that's awesome.
I didn't realize he was a quarterback at Michigan State either.
Yep. He played there in the 90s, I want to say, or the 80s.
70s.
70s, okay.
He's 66.
Oh,
he played there from 73 to 76. He was a quarterback and wide receiver.
Okay.
Then he was a GA at Michigan State, then coached DBs at Central, went back to Michigan State as a coach, and NC State, Rice, Stanford, the Vikings, back to Stanford, Notre Dame, then to Washington.
Huh. Okay.
He hasn't coached since 08.
Yeah, that's when he retired, I think.
Yeah, 76, 88, and 1 and 4 in bowl games.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Not a great bowl game record.
But in 2014, he was named a member of the College Football Playoff Selection Committee.
I feel like I did hear that, actually.
Interesting. Then he was volunteer golf coach on the women's Stanford women's golf team in 2011.
Huh.
Interesting.
Nice.
Yeah,
little,
not a great record.
Nice little historical tidbit, at least.
He only won this conference 1 year he ever coached.
There you go.
He was 21-15 at Notre Dame.
Okay, it's not great. I mean, it's not terrible, I guess. He
was fired. He was fired before the bowl game in 2004. The Insight Bowl.
Was that the? Okay. Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. His first year at Washington, he was 2-9. 2-9, 5-7. Oh my gosh. Yikes. He was 11-37 at Washington. 2-9, 5-7, 4-9, 0-12.
Yeah, you're not gonna do too much damage.
No.
As a coach, going 0-12.
No. Yikes. But he only coached at 3 schools. Head coached at 3 schools.
Okay.
And won one conference title in 20 years, 18 years. Yikes. And of course, that was a Pac-12 title, so that's not that hard. So, that's interesting. I forgot all about him. So, well, partner, that's it for me tonight.
Yeah, man. I don't really have much else.
We're still working on getting Maction guests.
Yes.
So keep your eyes out for that. We're still working on that. Some of these guys are getting a little busy now with meetings and whatnot, so we get that. But I got a few people I'm going to reach out to. Hopefully get them on here sometime soon.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, we'll put this stuff on our Twitter as well. But leading up to next week, give us some of your best bowl game names.
Yep.
And give us some of your best college traditions in general that we didn't talk about. We'd love to talk about them on Twitter. We're always busy on the Twitter because we have nothing else to do right now.
Yeah, so, we're always happy to banter back and forth. We
exactly.
We definitely love talking about our Maction guys. I think Sunday, quite a few Maction guys had some great spotlight moments. Notably guys from Toledo on my end, but Deontay Johnson had a big game. Reggie Gillum, the tight end, not walked on, but was an undrafted free agent, scored his first NFL touchdown. There's a lot of great Maction guys. Ben Roethlisberger hooking up with Deontay Johnson. I think that's cool. You got one Maction guy thrown to another. To me, that's just one of those neat things. So,
it's weird to think about too. Johnson was in elementary school when Roethlisberger was drafted.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because Roethlisberger was drafted in 2004.
Yeah.
And Deontay Johnson was born in 95, 96, something like that. Yeah.
That's so weird.
Maybe actually no, a little bit younger than that because he's only been in the year. Yeah, he would have been born in 98 or something. Yeah, so he would have been 6 or 7 when Roethlisberger was drafted.
Wild. That's gotta be weird in the locker room.
Well, imagine how Tom Brady feels. He's
sure.
You guys grew up watching me and mimicking my play style, and now I'm throwing to you. It's wild to think about.
That's strange. That'd be fun to talk to somebody about too.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Well, you said that's all on your end tonight?
Yes, sir.
Cool. All right. So, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We apologize that it's been such a crazy month of us being away. We're going to try to get back to getting on at least a regular schedule to get more content out there for you guys. So thank you for sticking with us. Thank you for tuning in. We do appreciate it. If you get the chance, follow us on Twitter. It is at College Sport Pod. Like AJ mentioned, we are constantly doing new things on the Twitter, trying to get you guys to engage with us. If you do follow us, ask a friend to follow us. Say, hey, go follow these guys, whether it's to make fun of us or to agree with us. We don't care. Follow us. We want to be able to engage with you guys. If you like our takes, if you hate our takes, we want to know about it. So please give us a follow. We definitely appreciate it.
The more follows we have, the better we look. So
Exactly. Lets us do other things that we want to do. If you get the chance, follow the Beard Brothers Fantasy Football Podcast, part of the Ford Beardsman Sports Network that we are also a part of. Those guys have been cranking out some solid content. I know they're taking a little bit of a break from their show right now, but go back, listen to some of their other old shows. They've got great fantasy football advice for you guys. You guys give them a chance, check it out. Definitely worth the listen. You can follow myself at Sheer Dumb Luck. You can also follow AJ over here at Roughing55. And AJ, I think that's going to do it for me. So anything else you wanted to say?
That's it for me, my man.
Cool, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.
See ya.